First thing I pulled out of that ground was her hand. Not her face, not her shoulder, her hand. Fingers curled like she was still fighting something. Dirt packed under every nail. I held it a moment before I understood what I was holding, and when I did, I didn't think. I just started digging. My name is Lakota. That is the name my mother gave me, which means friend to all things, which is a name I never quite deserved and spent a good portion of my life trying to live down. I was 44 years old that October. I had led my band for 11 years. I had buried a wife and a son in that time, put them both in the earth properly, with cedar smoke and song, and I had kept on walking afterward the way a man must. You don't stop. The people need you to not stop, so you don't. I was alone that morning, because I wanted to be alone. I had ridden out before dawn on the gray horse, east toward the low hills where the Garner brothers ran their cattle. Not to cause trouble, but because I wanted to look at the land without anyone looking at me. A chief is watched constantly. Every expression is read for meaning. I was tired of my own face being a message. The land out there was good land. Bottomland, near the creek, cottonwoods going yellow. The Garner brothers had fenced 2 miles of it. That summer with wire that they hadn't had permission to string, and I had let it sit because a fight over wire wasn't the fight I wanted. I was thinking about that wire, about whether patience was wisdom or just slow surrender. It was a cold morning. There'd been frost. My breath came out white. The gray horse stopped and wouldn't go forward. I trusted that horse the way you trust a man who's never lied to you. I gave him his head, and he walked left, through the frost-stiff grass, down toward the creek bank. And that's where I saw it. A low mound, actually turned, maybe 30 feet from the water. The dirt was dark, still wet underneath. Somebody had moved a lot of earth in the last several hours. I got down. I'm not sure what I expected. Maybe a dead calf. Maybe a cache of something the brothers wanted hidden. I knelt and put my palm flat on the mound and felt. Nothing at first, and then, under my hand, something that could have been the earth settling, or could have been a knock. A knock. I drew my knife and started cutting the dirt away. Then my hands. Then I was on my knees, scooping with both arms like a dog after a ground squirrel, throwing dirt behind me, not caring, and that is when the hand came out of the ground. Her hand, curled, dirt under every nail. I worked fast and didn't talk. I got her head free, and her chest, and when she pulled air in, the first time it was the ugliest, most desperate sound I ever heard a living thing make, like a door being forced. She grabbed the front of my shirt and held on, and I let her, and I kept digging. When I got her hips free, I lifted her out the rest of the way, and set her on the grass, and she lay there shaking, so hard I could hear her teeth. Pulled my blanket from the saddle and put it over her. Her eyes were open but not seeing yet. Blue eyes, full of dirt. I had a flask of water. I tilted a little into her mouth, and she spit it up, and then drank more. The first thing she said, maybe 10 minutes later, when she could say anything, was, "Don't take me back there." Her name was Nora Garner. She was 37 years old, and she was the older sister of Clyde and Holt Garner, which meant she was the eldest child and the rightful heir to their father's 700 acres, which their father had left to all 3 of them in equal parts. Her brothers had spent 2 months working out that the simplest solution was to put her in the ground, tell the county she'd run off with a drifter, and divide the land between themselves. They'd done it at night, dug a hole 4 feet deep, put her in it, wrapped in her own bedroll, and filled it in. She'd been in there since approximately midnight. Her around 6 in the morning. That's 6 hours in a pine box that wasn't even a pine box. Just cold dirt pressing in from every side, and her own used air. I learned all of this slowly, over hours, not all at once. She told it flat, no tears while she told it. She was past tears about it, or maybe she was too cold to cry yet. I couldn't say. She told it the way you tell something that you're still not sure you actually lived through. She'd stare at a point past my shoulder and talk, and then stop, and then talk again. I listened. I didn't speak much. I kept the fire going. I had made a fire against a cut bank, out of sight of the road. The gray horse stood nearby, pulling at the last of the grass. I gave her more water, then some dried meat from my bag, which she held in both hands, and ate like she hadn't seen food in a week, which she hadn't, near enough. While she ate, I looked at her hands. The nails were broken, all of them. She'd been trying to claw through the dirt, 6 hours of that. I don't know many men who could have stayed alive that long. Not from the suffocation alone, but from the terror of it. I don't think I could have. She was still here. When she finished eating, she looked at me and said, "What are you going to do with me?" Not afraid when she said it, just practical, asking for information. "That's up to you," I said. She looked at the fire. "I have no one in the county I can trust. They'll say I'm crazy or that I'm a liar. Clyde's got friends on the town council. Holt is." She stopped. "It doesn't matter. If I go back, they'll find another way to finish it." "Then don't go back," I said. She looked at me. "You're Dakota," she said. "I know who you are. Yes. People say things about you. People say things about everyone." She almost smiled. "Not quite. They say you're fair," she said. "They say you're hard, but you're fair." I didn't say anything to that. "If I stay with your people," she said. "Will they?" "You'll be safe," I said. "That's all you need to know tonight." She nodded. She pulled the blanket tighter. She looked at the fire again, and I saw something in her face let go. Not collapse, not crumble, but let go. The way a rope will after you've been holding it too long. She was still upright. She just wasn't holding that rope anymore. We rode back to the winter camp before noon. Her up on the gray horse, me walking beside it. I'd thought about putting her on the horse and riding out ahead to prepare people. I didn't want to leave her alone in open country where the brothers might pass. I walked. She rode. That was how we came in. There were looks. Of course there were looks. My people are not incurious. Older woman named Winona, who'd known me since I was in cradleboard, came to the horse before we'd even stopped and looked at the state of Nora. The dirt still matted in her hair, the broken nails, the hollows under her eyes. And didn't ask a single question. She just started clicking her tongue and pulling Nora down off the horse and steering toward the fire. That was Winona. She'd seen enough of the world to know what a woman who'd been put through the earth looked like, and she had no need of an explanation before helping her. I gave Winona the short version that evening. She listened and then said, "In Lakota, brothers should be dragged by horses." I told her that wasn't our way, she said. "It should be." I didn't sleep much that first night. I sat outside and listened to the camp, the horses moving, the fire settling, somebody's dog, and I thought about what I'd just done and what would come of it. The Garner brothers would find that empty hole in the ground within a day, maybe 2. They'd know she wasn't dead. Their first move would be to go to the Indian agent and file some complaint. Trespass, kidnapping, whatever word they chose. Their second move would be to come themselves with whatever men Clyde could round up from the saloon. I was not afraid of either move, but I was aware of the weight of what I'd stepped into. I had not just pulled a woman from the ground. I had put myself between her and 2 men who'd already shown what they were willing to do. That line, once drawn, doesn't get undrawn. A man has to know which lines are worth drawing. I knew. Over the next 3 days, she got her strength back faster than I expected. Winona fed her and gave her clean clothes, and let her sleep the first day. But by the second, Nora was up, moving around the camp, watching everything with those eyes that missed nothing. She didn't pester people or make herself the center of anything. She stayed out of the way and helped where she could, quietly without being asked. I watched that. It told me something about who she was. On the 3rd day, she came and sat near me in the early evening. "You haven't asked me anything," she said. "I don't need to," I said. She was quiet a moment then. "What happens when they come?" "Then I talk to them first," I said. "If that doesn't settle it, there are other ways to settle it. Clyde will have men. So will I." She looked at me. "You do that. Go up against the whole county, over me." I looked back at her. "You're here," I said. "That makes it simple." She didn't say anything for a while. Then, I don't understand you. You will, I said. She frowned. Not unfriendly. The way a person frowns when they're actually thinking. You don't even know me. I know enough, I said. Was true. A person who claws at 6 feet of dirt for 6 hours rather than giving up is a person worth knowing. That's not a small thing. Met men who'd quit smaller fights than that and called it wisdom. She hadn't quit. She was here. And she was already thinking forward, not back. That's rare in anyone. She nodded slowly and looked at the fire. All right, she said, like she'd made a decision. I didn't know then what decision exactly. I found out later. But she said it like it settled something. And then she didn't bring it up again. The brothers came on the 4th day, Clyde in front, on a big roan, with 5 men behind him. Holt to his left, newer hat, nervous eyes. The 5 behind were the kind of men you hire when you want something to go an unpleasant way. Heavy, quiet, holstered. I rode out to meet them on the flat with 4 of my men behind me. I stopped 30 yards away and waited. Clyde pulled up. He was a big man, red-faced, the kind of big comes that from confidence more than muscle. He looked at me, like he was going to tell me something I'd be grateful to. Here. Where's my sister, he said. Safe, I said. She's coming back with me. No, I said. He stared at me. You know what you're doing? You know who I am? I know you dug a hole 4 feet deep, I said, and put your sister in it. I know what you are. His face went through something. It started as surprise and ended somewhere colder. Holt, behind him, looked at the ground. That's a lie, Clyde said. I pulled her out, I said. I have the ground itself as evidence. You filled it in wet. The shovel cuts are still clear. You want me to bring your sister out here, so you can explain to her face how that's a lie? The 5 hired men were very still. Not the stillness of men ready to fight, the stillness of men reconsidering whether they'd been paid enough. Bring her out, Clyde said, lower now, less certain. No, I said again. This is the only thing I have to say to you. She stays. If you come back onto this land with men or with papers from the Indian agent, I will go to the territorial judge myself, and I will bring 2 witnesses from your own town who can describe what I pulled out of that ground, and I will bring her. She will describe it herself. That judge will listen to me. We have had dealings. I keep my word, and he knows it. I let that settle then. The land you fenced along the creek, that wire comes down by Friday, all of it, and you don't come back here again. Silence. The roan moved under Clyde. He grabbed the reins hard. You're making an enemy, he said. You already made one, I said. You just dug the hole in the wrong place. I held his eyes until he looked away. That's the only part that matters in a moment like that. Who looks away first? He looked away. He turned the roan and rode back down the flat, and his men followed, and Holt last of all. Not meeting my eyes, I watched them go until they were small. Then I went back to camp and I sat down, and my hands were steady. That matters too. Your hands being steady afterward. She was standing at the edge of camp when I came back. She'd watched from a distance. She didn't ask what was said. She looked at my face and read it. It's done, she said. For now, I said. She nodded. The wire on the creek, I said. Was that your father's land too? All of it was, she said. Then I'll make sure it stays usable, I said. For the time being. She looked at me a long time. You took on a lot for a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, I said. The weeks after that fell into a shape I hadn't expected. She stayed. I hadn't told her to stay, and I hadn't told her she could go. That wasn't my place. But she stayed. And each day she found something more to do in the camp. And each day she got a little more of the language from Winona, who had apparently decided that Nora was her particular project. I'd hear them sometimes in the evenings. Winona saying a word, Nora repeating it badly, Winona laughing the way Shy laughed, which was enormous for a woman her size. It was a good sound. I found myself paying attention to where Nora was. Not watching her. I'm not describing something small and furtive. I mean that I was aware of her in the camp the way you're aware of a fire. By its warmth, by whether it's going or not. When she was near, I was aware of it. When she wasn't, I noticed the absence. I hadn't been aware of a person that way in years. I wasn't entirely sure I welcomed it. I said something like that to Winona one evening, not directly, but close enough. She just looked at me and said, "You've been a stone long enough. Stones don't feel the cold," which was not an answer, but it was Winona. November came, and the temperature dropped hard. We moved the camp twice, once to get better shelter from the north wind, once because of a late-season scouting party that I wanted to stay clear of. The second move was fast and a little rough. She handled it without complaint, didn't slow anyone down, carried her own weight, and someone else's when a family nearby needed help. I saw that too. One night, late sitting by the fire, this was after the second move. Maybe 3 weeks into November, she said, out of nowhere. "Do you miss her?" I looked at her. She hadn't asked about my wife before. Nobody in the camp talked to me about it directly. "Yes," I said. "What was she like?" Nobody had asked me that either. Not straight out. I thought about it. "Quiet," I said. "Smarter than she let on. People underestimate her, and then she'd say one thing, and you'd realize she'd been 3 steps ahead the whole time." I paused. "She died in the winter. Third year we were together. There was sickness and it moved fast. My son was 4. He lasted another year. She didn't say she was sorry." I appreciated that. There's nothing worse than someone who didn't know them telling you they're sorry. She just looked at the fire for a while. Then she said, "I had a husband, a long time ago. He went back east and I stayed. I don't know what that says about me." "That you knew where you belonged," I said. She glanced at me. "Or that nobody wanted me to follow." "That's not what I see," I said. She looked back at the fire. Her jaw was set. "Not hard, just set." She said, very quietly, "What do you see?" "A woman who dug at the ground for 6 hours and came out the other side," I said. "I don't know too many things that would stop you." She was quiet for a long while. The fire moved between us. "Dakota," she said. "Yeah, I want to stay. Not because I have nowhere else. I want to stay here." She glanced at me, then looked away. If you want that?" I looked at her, the firelight. Her face, which had gotten its color back and then some. Her hands in her lap, not clenched, not performing ease, just resting, honest. "I want that," I said. She nodded. Like we'd agreed on something practical, which I suppose we had. But when she looked at me, again it wasn't practical. It was direct and warm, and she held the look. And that warmth went straight through me, the way heat goes through cold ground. We didn't say anything else for a while. After a time she moved and sat closer to me. Not touching, just closer, and we watched the fire go down together. Winter came full. The territory went white, and the wind off the plains was something you had to brace for. She learned to read the weather from the way the horses stood. She learned 12 words in Lakota, and then 20, and then I stopped counting. She and Winona built a friendship that was nothing like any friendship I had. Loud, argumentative in a warm way, occasionally involving Winona, physically moving Nora to where she wanted her, which Nora accepted with a patience she did not extend to most things. There were 2 more visits from the county that winter, once from the Indian agent, a thin man named Purcell, who I'd dealt with before. He came with a document and a nervous expression. I read the document carefully and told him it described a voluntary arrangement and contained no violation of any law I was subject to, and that if he needed to verify that the woman was there of her own will, he could ask her himself. He asked her. She told him plainly that she was where she chose to be, and that her brothers could collect their document and put it somewhere comfortable. Her left. He did not come back. The second time was just Holt, alone, no hat this time. He came to the edge of camp, on foot, and asked if he could speak to his sister, and I let him, because it wasn't my conversation to refuse. She went and talked to him at the edge of the trees for maybe 20 minutes. I didn't watch. When she came back, she was quiet for a while, and then she said, "He's not Clyde. He went along with it because he was afraid of Clyde. He's not. He wasn't glad about it." "What did you tell him?" I said. "That if he ever wanted to make it right, he could start by pulling Clyde's wire. The creek land himself," she said. and that I was done with that family except for him, and only if he proved I should be. Fair, I said. He cried, she said, like it surprised her. I didn't expect that. People are strange, I said. She was quiet again, and then she said, I told him I was happy. I looked at her. She looked back at me. I am, she said, plain as that. There is a way a man receives a thing like that. It goes in at some angle you can't quite describe. I'd been carrying the word chief for 11 years like I carried everything. Steady, necessary, no weight acknowledged. I'd kept people fed and safe, and I'd made the hard calls and gone on when going on was all there was. I'd done it right, mostly. But a chief is a chief to his people, and for a long time that had been all there was to it. There was no one who was just for me. She was just for me. I put my hand over hers where she had it resting on her knee. She turned her hand over and held mine. Her grip was firm. Firm. Like she meant it to last. We stayed like that. Spring came late that year, the snow holding into April, and when it broke all at once. One warm week, the creek flooding its banks, the cottonwoods throwing their cotton into the air so thick you could catch it in your hand. We walked along the creek one morning, the first warm morning, the ground still muddy. She was wearing her hair loose. There was cottonwood fluff in it, and she didn't know. We stopped where the creek bent, and she looked out at the water, coming fast and brown, and said, "Show me where you found me." I walked her upstream about a quarter-mile to where the mound had been. There was nothing there now. Last fall's grass and the river willows, and a crow sitting in one of them. Watching us the way crows do, she stood and looked at the spot. I used to have bad dreams about it, she said, being in it every night for a month. And now, I said. She looked at the ground where it had been, and then she looked at me. Now when I dream about it, she said, I'm looking up and you're there, looking down at me. That's where the dream ends. She held my eyes. That's not a bad dream, the crow called once, and lifted out of the willow. We walked back to camp, along the water, close enough that her shoulder was against mine. That's the whole of it, I suppose. That's how it started, and where it settled, and what it came to. The territory changed around us, the way it always does. New men, new arguments, new lines on maps that nobody asked us about. Some of those I fought, and some I let go, and I tried to know the difference. She stood with me through all of it. When I was wrong, she told me. When I was right, she didn't need to tell me, but she was there. I am past 60 now. I have been carrying that word chief for 30 years, and it has gotten no lighter, but I have gotten stronger, is maybe the same thing. We have seen a great deal together, she and she is still direct, and still reads a situation faster than most men I know, and still occasionally argues with Winona, who is very old now, and whose laugh has gotten even bigger, which nobody thought was possible. There is an evening in my mind that I carry clear. Nothing dramatic. We are sitting outside and the light is going, and the camp behind us is making its evening sounds, and she is mending something, head bent, and I am just sitting, not thinking much. And she looks up and finds my eyes, and she doesn't say anything. She just looks. And the look says, you, just that you. I have been valued for what I can do, and what I provide, and what I carry. But that look is about none of that. That look is about just me. Dakota, the man underneath the chief, the man she found worth staying for. I don't know any richer thing than that.